Trending, trending, trending. We're here. We're doing it. This is what has happened in the last week of MMA, Jiu-Jitsu, the internet. We're going to start. We've got to say it. RIP. It seems like every week someone's dying.
It really does lately.
But this has got to be mentioned. Stephan Bonnar, absolutely rest in peace. One of the fundamental icons for the foundation of the UFC.
Yeah, maybe one of the, fundamental's the word. Perhaps one of the greatest characters of the UFC too.
Yeah.
It came from that era where there were a lot of characters.
Very interesting.
Chris Lieben, Diego Sanchez, Forrest Griffin.
That era of tough. The ultimate fighter.
Tough, and they were like kind of loose units.
Quirky.
Unprofessional.
Weird.
Unprofessional in a way, like not like you would see a professional fighter now. It's like fighting was this other thing that they did.
Yeah. And unfortunately, he passed away in the last couple of days. Heart complications, apparently, at work. He was at work.
Wow.
And really what a lot of people may not know, what has been considered one of the greatest fights of all time and ranked as the #1 fight of all time, possibly because it built the UFC, was him versus Forrest Griffin.
Yeah.
In an absolute hammerfest.
That was the final of the Ultimate Fighter Season 1, right?
Yeah, and it was the $1 million contract to fight in the UFC, and there was only meant to be one.
Yeah.
But here's the thing a lot of people don't know. It was on, I think, Strike TV, and each round it got more and more and more. Because people are calling people like, yo, you seen this thing right now? You need to watch this stuff. It's going down. And every round, the viewership went up to be the most watched sporting event of that year.
Really?
Like the PGA Masters or whatever is the #1 thing, apparently. I have no idea. It outranked that in 15 minutes or 20 minutes. It was just like, boom, this sensation. And the crazy thing that happened was Dana White they gave it to Forrest Griffin. But he was like, man, we got to give them
both a contract.
They both got a contract.
That's
it was
pretty
like,
sick.
oh.
Yeah.
And that formula, the tough formula, gave people insight into these people who are real humans. They're just crazy and went really hard. And he was one of those people that he helped steer the course of the UFC to get some mainstream traction and actually get some success. Because they were down to their last kind of dollars to make that happen.
Now, just a note on The Ultimate Fighter, right?
Yeah.
Which is the reality show that sort of is behind the UFC. For a lot of our younger listeners, I'm assuming they probably don't engage with it.
Maybe not.
Because you have a lot of content around jiu-jitsu these days.
Yeah.
You can watch Flow Grappling. You can watch heaps of shit on YouTube. There's, all that stuff going on. But back in the day, if you were into jiu-jitsu, there wasn't really much you could watch.
No.
You could find clips of shit on YouTube, but they weren't particularly good. So I almost feel like at least for me in the early days of jiu-jitsu, of my journey with it, watching The Ultimate Fighter and watching the UFC was almost like an extension of my jiu-jitsu thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, well, they're doing some grappling and they're also doing this other shit. But it wasn't like, oh, that's a whole different sport that I know nothing about. It was kind of sewn up in together, wasn't it?
Yeah. And look, I think the thing about Stephan Bonnar is he was actually like a fairly understated character. Like, he was a bit more laid back, He's
a fucking weird dude.
Weird cat.
Very unassuming fighter.
Quirky.
Yeah.
But so strong and like could eat shots.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, and I think that's an incredible thing. It's hard to estimate a toll that takes on the human body, but you're like, wow, that guy's tough.
Yeah.
And that heart that comes through, it's hard to not engage with that and appreciate that about someone.
Rest in peace, Stephan Bonnar.
Rest in peace, bro. You were the man. Respect. Now, breaking mechanics, Joey.
Everyone's breaking fucking legs, breaking arms.
Talk to me. We got some issues.
So a bit of a rant today. In the jiu-jitsu world, there's this thing where it's like accepted to say, oh, I broke that person's elbow. Oh, I broke their foot.
He broke my foot.
Right? Like if I'm attacking the heel hook, I'm trying to break the knee. Now, here's the beef that I have with it. There was a recent match, a high-profile match, and one of the fighters was like, yeah, the guy fucking broke my leg, but whatever. Kept fighting. And it's like, all right, breaking your leg. Your leg is basically, if you're breaking the leg, we're talking about the shin.
We're talking about the bones.
We could even be talking about the femur, but tibia, fibula, or the femur.
Yeah.
And it's like a broken bone is a pretty catastrophic fucking injury.
That's crazy. That's a lot of force to be able to do that.
Now, it does happen. You do see those clips occasionally in jiu-jitsu. Yes, a joint lock results in one of the bones
bone break.
proximal to the joint breaking. But when jiu-jitsu players say, I broke their knee or I broke their foot, they're saying actually I damaged the ligaments of the ankle or I damaged the ligaments of the knee.
That's not so cool, Joe.
So another thing that we say is popped it. Okay, fair enough. Popped it is kind of describing the sound of of the ligament tearing, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you ruptured it. Popped also implies dislocation.
True.
And this is another, same kind of beef. I'm like, no, you didn't dislocate. You just tore the connective tissue in that joint a little bit.
And you can also, here's something else, guys, especially with the elbow. I don't know about the knee. You can subluxate your elbow where basically you do dislocate it momentarily and it pops back in. And the ligaments stay intact.
Yeah.
It's just like you're so elastic. There's so much adrenaline and heat in the moment. It's just like, oh my God, that looks crazy. Pops
I've
back
actually
in.
used that as an escape, like a voluntary dislocation.
Little-
free the arm.
Oh,
and then
wow. God, what are you, Jacare? Is that the greatest jiu-jitsu match ever?
But so I feel we've got to set the record straight. Obviously, the entire jiu-jitsu culture is hearing this right now. Guys, this is coming from the top down. Let's just call it what the fuck it is. Damage the ligaments, damage the joint. We didn't break it. We didn't pop it, because it's misleading. Because then you get these young people like, oh man, so-and-so got their leg broke. It's like, no, bitch.
That's not what happened.
Yeah, but impressionable young white belt, fuck, I can't blame you for thinking that that's what actually happened.
He's the best at jiu-jitsu, so he must know. Yeah,
He's
not true.
He's a medical doctor.
In his professional medical opinion.
I actually spoke about it with Jeremy Paul Skinner.
Okay.
About it. He was like, and he was like, in jiu-jitsu, we say this, what we mean is this. I'm like,
yeah. And I mean, look, when they talk about breaking mechanics, they're talking about ligaments.
yeah. And
You're not trying to break a bone.
No, that's
it's
right.
It's a joint lock.
And you are, even in that regard, it's like, yeah, you are trying to break the ligaments.
Yes.
But you generally don't.
You stop
It's
before,
very-
it might be a little tear or...
Yeah, that's right. It's actually very rare that the ligament completely ruptures. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get some clarity on that, people. Last but not least, our guy, Rafael Lovato Jr. made a comeback in Japan.
I believe, is it Rafael or is it Rafael? I think it's Rafael because he's
American, but he has, I think his father or his mother is part Brazilian.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. Man, fuck that guy's had in a career.
Amazing career. And also, when he became Bellator champion, beat Gabriel Musasi. Gegard Musasi. When he was super powerful, just kind of come out of the UFC. And he was an underdog for that match.
Musasi, yeah.
And
he hit peak operating temperature in Bellator, didn't he?
Bellator, yeah. And so for him to win that, and then I think within months told he can't continue his MMA career.
I think he knew going into that fight that he had a brain condition.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm doing this fight.
I've got to have a shot.
And then I'm out.
Yeah, but he'd always, and then he came back to jiu-jitsu as well. He won the European Championship.
Yeah.
I think he fought at Worlds, and then he fought at the ADCC.
He did.
So he's got a great comeback considering so late in his career, having won pretty much every other major IBJJF tournament, no-gi Worlds, you name it. And then he wanted to fight in Japan.
Yeah, for the younger players, they would have been like, who's this guy at ADCC? I've never seen this guy. You're like, this guy's been around the traps for a long time, achieved a lot of shit.
Yep.
When we saw him at this recent ADCC, it was definitely not, of course it was
not peak.
No, it was his later years in terms of competition.
But still did very well. He was in the finals. He won 2 or 3 matches.
Did he?
I think he fought against
Bodoni?
Maybe Bodoni, or maybe he was heavy. Maybe he went against Nicky Rod or something. He's a big guy. He's a big unit.
Guy.
But man, he lost in the finals.
So competitive.
It's amazing for him to have this longevity. And even now, just on the weekend, fought in Japan and won via Kimura.
Yes.
So good.
And he was like, I think he said it's been 3 years since he found out about the brain condition.
Yep.
And that was basically context on that. The doctors were like, you can't fight anymore.
You can't take hits there.
He won the title in Bellator and then he's like, I'm retiring.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if the condition had changed or if he was just like, I'm ticking this box before I call it a day.
He was such a big fan of Pride, and all his heroes in jiu-jitsu had fought there, like Hickson and the whole Gracie lineage. And he's like, I want to fight in Japan.
It's pretty cool.
So, it's really cool for him to go out on that note. So shout out to Rafael Lovato Jr.
Shanji was there. Cameron Shane was there, who we were hanging out with in Vegas.
That's right. Yeah.
Shout out to Cameron Shane. It was cool. They had their little posse.
Yeah, it's so cool to see people who you looked up to for a long time get a chance to shine and use their jiu-jitsu in MMA.
Damn right.
Awesome.
Guys, that's trending this week. Thank you. If you've got shit you want us to talk about, hit us up on the YouTube or on the Instagram. We'll see you next time.
Pew, pew.